Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our A2P 10DLC explainer webinar. There are some important and time-sensitive industry-wide requirements that will change how you send messages to US numbers. And we're here today to help guide you through how these changes affect you, what you need to do on your end to ensure that your messages continue to be delivered, as well as answer any questions that you have. My name is Ty Hill, and I'm the Chief of Staff here at OpenPhone. I'm currently visiting Mexico City, Mexico, and I'm curious, where are y'all based? Go ahead and familiarize yourself with the chat function on the right-hand side and let us know where you're joining from. I see that someone already put a question in the chat. While we do have a live Q&A session at the end, if you have any questions during the presentation, please let us know using the questions tab on the lower right-hand side, right next to the chat tab. It's a lot easier to organize things in there. Plus, my colleague Drew, who's based in the San Francisco area and a leader of our amazing support team, is moderating this chat, and he will make sure that either he answers them or they get flagged and you see him pop into the chat right there. Okay, cool. We got a ton of folks. We have folks joining from Colorado, Fort Worth, Texas, Toronto, a lot of open folks in Toronto, San Francisco, California, Arizona, the Andes Mountains of Peru. That's amazing. I've always wanted to go to Peru, Philippines, Massachusetts, Monterey, California. We have people from all over the place. This is joining from India, Ecuador. Wow, we have people from all over the world, Argentina. It just goes to show the power of software. It could be used anywhere in the world, which is a beautiful thing. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before, I've actually seen a question in the chat. Please put the questions in the questions tab. It's a lot easier for us to make sure that they're answered. They're going to get lost in that chat tab. But one question I see people say is, I don't send text messages to US numbers. Does this apply to me? No, if you do not send text messages to US numbers, then you don't need to register with the US carriers at this time. But we'll talk more about that later during this presentation. Also, just so you know, this session is being recorded. So if you have to hop off at any time, or you just got your answer and you say, hey, I'm out of here, I'll watch the conclusion of the demo, or I'll watch the recording upon conclusion of the demo, feel free to do that. Okay, so quick agenda for today. First, we're going to walk through what A2P 10DLC actually means, including who is and who is not affected by it. Next, we'll cover everything about registration, including how to register, what information you need to provide, what to classify your use case as or your campaign, as well as timelines for registration. Then we've already compiled some frequently asked questions. We know that there's a dedicated section at the end, but we've gotten a lot of the same questions and want to make sure that we get those answered. And then finally, we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. The presentation part should take about 30 minutes. We'll have 15 minutes for questions, but don't worry, I blocked off my calendar for an hour. So if y'all have questions that kind of keep rolling, I will be happy to stay to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. Okay, so first, what is A2P 10DLC? So A2P 10DLC is an acronym that stands for Application to Person 10-digit long code. So what that means is anyone using a virtual or application-based phone system like OpenPhone is technically application to peer, or A2P. And 10DLC means 10-digit long code. So that's different from toll-free numbers. In other words, a local US telephone number is a 10-digit long code, and that's covered in these regulations. So A2P 10DLC messaging regulations were adopted by the 3 major US carriers so that the carriers are able to ensure all messaging traffic is legitimate and trustworthy. These regulations were initially put in place in March of 2021, so about 2 years ago. And they've definitely given us a lot of time as they've rolled this out. There's been some changes to them as well as they've provided clarity and we navigate this space. We've tried to be fully transparent in communicating this with you. But recently, the carriers have become increasingly aggressive with message filtering and have let us know that they will continue to increase unregistered message filtering until eventually disallowing unregistered messages altogether. And so we have what we believe are rough timelines and expectations, but we want to make sure to get everyone this information and get people registered as quickly as possible so they have no disruption in service. Now, a benefit of registering is not just maintaining the status quo, but the carriers promise that you will have better overall delivery quality and a lower risk of filtering than ever before. And here are those three major US carriers that help lead this initiative. Generally, you're not going to know the carrier of your customers or your contacts when you reach out. But these three carriers make up the vast majority of US cellular customers, even people that are on smaller telecom providers. Many of them utilize T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon's networks. So since you don't know what carrier your customer or contact is using, if you send messages to US numbers, you're going to want to get registered. So what are the requirements of A2P 10DLC? Well, in short, the carriers want to know who you are and what your purpose is in messaging their customers. So what that means is they want you to first register a brand, which basically just means you are identifying who you are to the carrier networks. Then you register what type of messages you're sending, which is called a campaign. And once you have these both registered, don't worry, we'll handle all of the technical stuff on our end. So if you add or remove phone numbers or you add or remove users to your workspace, that registration is applied to your numbers and applied to your workspace. So once you're registered, your messages are registered and should have increased deliverability rates. Now, a big question is who is affected by these regulations? If you use OpenPhone to message folks in the US, then these regulations apply to you. We've had a lot of confusion and questions over this. We've received questions such as, I only message customers who message me first. Does this apply to me? Or I use OpenPhone for personal use. Does this apply to me? Or I'm not sending marketing campaigns, just regular business text messages. Does this apply to me? And the answer is, well, if you use OpenPhone in any capacity to message folks in the US with a 10-digit long code number, then yes, these regulations do apply to you and you're going to want to get registered. As of now, we currently only have a pathway of registration for folks with a valid business ID. In the US, that is an EIN, a CCN in Canada, or a similar business ID in your respective country. Now, this registration is called low volume standard brand and well as low volume mixed messaging campaigns. And we'll later dive into more of what this exactly means. But coming soon, I know it's a burning question for a lot of you. We'll have a pathway to registrations for either businesses without an EIN, as well as folks that use OpenPhone for personal use. This is called sole proprietor brand in campaigns. So if this use case describes how you use OpenPhone, then you don't need to take immediate action at this time, but be on the lookout for steps on how to register once we get that in the product in the coming weeks. So just as important as who is affected is knowing who is not affected by these regulations. Well, if you don't use 10-digit long codes, to send messages to US numbers, then you're not affected by these regulations. That means if you only use OpenPhone to call, or you only message folks in Canada, or you only use toll-free numbers, then these regulations do not apply to you. Now, one caveat for folks using toll-free numbers to message, whether or not you're messaging folks in the US or Canada, there is a separate verification process, completely separate regulations from A2P 10DLC for verifying toll-free phone numbers. If you begin to see some of your messages filtered or you want to get ahead of potential filtering and use toll-free numbers, please read our help article regarding verification of toll-free numbers. My colleague Drew can actually share that with you right now in the chat. Okay, so registration and timelines. Okay, so registration explain. Registration is a multi-step process. You could see a flow chart of what this looks like here, where you first submit your business profile, which is reviewed for US A2P brand registration. And once approved, is submitted to review for your campaign registration. We've built a very handy dashboard in-app that an owner of your workspace should be able to use to submit your company information for registration. My colleague Drew can share our direct link to where that is in our web app. It's called our Trust page, as well as he could share a quick guide that you could follow along as you register. We have a handy dandy help center article with some nice visuals that will help you every step of the way. Now, filling out this form only takes about a few minutes. And once you submit, your brand is in the process of being reviewed. Now, the initial review for brand registration almost always takes less than a day, often taking less than an hour. Once approved, a $4 brand registration fee is charged. Then the information is passed to a third-party company who manually reviews the information to declare a campaign use case. They will also charge a $15 manual review fee, and if approved, the brand and campaign are recorded in the campaign registry, which is a third-party database holding these registrations for the major US carriers. Now, please keep in mind that we don't collect any of these fees. We don't make any money off of this. These are just industry requirements. They're entirely pass-through costs, meaning that you send it to us and we just pass it through to the third-party companies that assist in registration. And once you are registered, you'll be sending A2P 10DLC registered messages. If you'd like to learn more about the campaign registry, you can go directly to their website, and my colleague Drew can share that link as well. Okay, so while we currently only offer one type of registration, the low volume standard brand, we'll soon be releasing sole proprietor registration for our users without an EIN. Low volume standard is for users who have an EIN or equivalent business identification numbers. Sole proprietor is for folks that are either using OpenPhone for personal use or have a business that doesn't currently have a legal business identification number. So now more of a deep dive into the different types of registration. Low volume standard registration allows for up to 400 phone numbers to be assigned to a single campaign and allows for deliverability of up to 6,000 messages a day. Now this still is within, you're still constricted by the fair usage policy in terms of the number of messages. So unless your workspace had the commensurate number of seats, then you probably won't be sending 6,000 messages a day. But the good thing is if you are low volume standard registration, if you were sending that volume, that means your messages shouldn't get filtered up to that 6,000 mark. Now with low volume standard, you'll pay a fixed $19 one-time charge, which is that $4 brand registration fee and the $15 campaign vetting fee. As well as to maintain the campaign, you'll pay a $1.50 monthly charge. So we'll just go ahead and tack that on to your monthly cost. And again, these are entirely pass through. That goes directly to the campaign registry. So there's nothing on our end that we're not receiving any of those funds. So sole proprietor we should have released in the coming weeks. I know this applies to a lot of you folks here on the call. Again, it is for folks who do not have an EIN or equivalent business identification number, but they have access to a US or Canadian address. This means it can be used by individuals, non-businesses, or businesses that do not have a business identification number such as an EIN. Now, the sole proprietor campaign, because there's a little less information required and there's a little less due diligence in terms of verifying you are who you say you are, there's a little bit more of restrictions when compared to the low volume standard. The biggest one being is the sole proprietor brand only allows one phone number and one campaign, which means if you are using OpenPhone for personal use, you could only have one phone number on your account. And I'm happy to answer any more questions about that later, especially with how we'll respond to that in product. But hopefully that is clear and makes sense. Sole proprietor also allows up to 3,000 messages a day. It has that same $19 one-time charge, but the monthly fee for sole prop is $2 a month as opposed to that $1.50. Now, to qualify for sole prop, you'll also need to do a one-time OTP verification using a traditional cell phone number. I've tested this out myself. They just send you a thing. You have quite some time to verify that, yes, this is you verifying that number. As previously stated, we do not have sole prop registration available in app right now, but we should in the coming weeks. So if you're eagerly waiting, please keep a lookout on your email. So what information exactly is required to register? You'll see the difference between low volume standard and sole proprietor now. Low volume standard looks like it actually requires quite a bit of information. You'll need your business name, the physical address it is registered under, the business identity, which is for you is going to be direct customer. I probably could have removed that one from the slide, to be honest. The business type, what you are registered as, the company status, whether you're private or public, the stock ticker and exchange information if you are public, which I don't think most of our customers are not publicly traded companies, business registration number and type. So it's EIN for US based, CCN for Canada, or another business identifier for non-US companies, the industry you're in, the website you have. If you don't have a website, just use socials, the regions of operations, some messaging samples, which is just like what messages do you send to your customers? Go ahead and write one up or copy and paste what you've sent in the past. And a point of contact, including names, email, title, phone number, job that they could contact if they had any questions. Now, we've gotten some folks confused. They say the industry doesn't exactly line up, or I'm in a country that doesn't have the same type of business types. Go ahead and select what is most closely related to your business and use case when registering. The biggest thing that we're seeing if you are rejected is because the business name doesn't match the business name on the official registration for, the EIN, what is actually registered under. So that is the biggest thing. Everything else is somewhat secondary after that. So sole proprietor requires a lot less information, which makes sense why you have less total text and are limited to one phone number. As you can see, sole prop requires the brand or business name. If it's for personal use, you could just say that. First name and last name, an email address and mobile phone number. The mobile phone number is used for the one-time verification. A physical address in the US or Canada, as well as sample messages that you send to your customers. Okay, so I know y'all have a ton of burning questions, but we put together this FAQ to tackle some of the most common questions before we open the floor. So first question, many people are wondering, when will unregistered messages be cut off? So if I send an unregistered message, when will the major 3 US carriers stop accepting them or filter out all unregistered messages? So we do expect that eventually they will stop supporting unregistered message deliverability. We've been in communications with the carriers. And if you followed some of our competitors, you'll even see that some of them were given a March 31st date in which their outbound messaging will be turned off. They responded accordingly, where they require their customers now to be registered before they're able to send text messages. We, along with our partner carriers, have been in talks with the 3 major US carriers. The partner carriers negotiate on our behalf to extend timelines and help us gracefully transition to A2P 10DLC. We don't believe at this time that unregistered messaging will be turned off at least through August of this year, But priorities, timelines often shift and change, and we're going to continue to work with all carriers involved and be as transparent as possible with you. As we'll talk about in a later slide, there is quite a backlog of applications now, so we really don't expect anything to be turned off anytime soon, but we also would encourage you to apply as quickly as you can. So when do I have to register by? Well, I'd just recommend registering sooner than later, as we've seen the US carriers becoming more aggressive in their message filtering. Just because they won't stop all messaging communication, you're going to want to, prevent being filtered in the time being. And it's better to get ahead of this and be compliant than be caught by surprise when they add a hard cutoff date. So how long does registration take? Now, another reason you should register sooner than later, as previously noted, right now we're seeing the registration for brands take less than an hour, but the campaign registration, since it's at manual review with that $15 fee, the carriers, all of our competitors have been pushing their customers to get registered as quickly as possible, and we're doing the same. This has led to a large backlog in the manual reviews, and registration currently is taking over 45 days. We expect that this will decrease to a few weeks in the coming months, but it is out of our control. And again, I'd advise you to get registered sooner than later. Does registration guarantee deliverability? No, it does not guarantee deliverability, but it should improve your deliverability and lower your likelihood of getting filtered. Now, in the event that you are filtered incorrectly as spam, if you are unregistered, we're currently unable to escalate your messages to the carrier to get that block removed. So if you're sending out text messages that might have a marketing angle or might have a link in it, something, and you're sending the same message to a lot of people right now as an unregistered number, it's possible that the US carriers will flag your number as spam. They usually do this individually, so you might not be able to send to T-Mobile with that number for a while, or AT&T or Verizon. Now, at the current state, we're unable to escalate your messages to the carrier and for certain get that block removed. We could try, you could reach out to our support team, but there's no guarantee. But if you are registered, they'll have all of that brand and campaign information, and a quick escalation and verification on our end will have you delivering messages once again. So you're going to want to get registered. Now, you might be wondering, what about other US mobile networks, or what about Canadian mobile networks? So first, what about other US mobile networks? Like I said earlier, you generally don't know the carrier of your recipient on the other end of your text before you message them. So there's a chance you might message a carrier like US Mobile, who has not adopted A2P 10DLC regulations, and technically you could send messages to users of US Mobile without issue. However, the vast majority of numbers utilized in the US T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon networks. And even if they use a company like a Mint Mobile, that utilizes T-Mobile's carrier network as well. So you're going to want to get registered if you send to US numbers. Now for Canada, if you have a Canadian number, but you message US numbers, yes, these do apply to you. You're still going to want to get registered. But whether you're using a US number or a Canadian number, if you only message Canadian numbers, you don't need to register at this time. However, in the future, the Canadian carriers may follow suit and adopt these same regulations. We'll make sure to give you a heads up and be fully transparent as we get information here. Okay, so I already registered with a different virtual provider. Do I have to register again? Unfortunately, yes, you will have to register again. Changing providers causes you the need to re-register. So even if you are registered with another carrier and you port your numbers to OpenPhone, or if you're registered with OpenPhone and you leave for another solution and your numbers were already registered over here, you will need to register again. This is something that's out of our hands. It's just the way the rules work. Cool. And that was our last question in the FAQ section, but now we have the open floor for discussion for Q&A. And it looks like I was a little early on the presentation. Maybe I was talking a bit quick. So this should give y'all plenty of time to make sure that the questions are answered. I see that there are a lot of them. And also I see some folks put questions in the chat. we'll probably miss those if you put questions in the chat. You had to put them in the questions tab, so make sure to add them there. Point being is, I can't always see which questions were asked. Sorry, I was reading a question, slightly distracted. Natasha says, the presentation is barely readable. Any chance to make it bigger or share after the session? Sorry that I'm just seeing this now, Natasha. I didn't realize. I'm looking at my screen and it looks normal. I'm not sure how it's appearing on your screens. So sorry about that, but we won't be able to make it bigger in the replay. I think maybe you could adjust your screen size, or maybe your thing, maybe it has the presentation and the video is need to be adjusted in the app. I'm not 100% sure. You could adjust it as well upon the replay, but from my screen, everything looks fine. So sorry if this is affecting other people as well, but hopefully that helps. Okay, scrolling through the questions. Stephanie Colin says, are we able to utilize the service to register our phone number and get the same results? No, do not go to, I don't know what freecallerregistry.com is. That's not related to the campaign registry. That is not related to A2P 10DLC, but do not register on anything outside of OpenPhone. We had some people confused. They went directly to the carrier registry. They read some help docs there. They started applying for things there. And, we've built everything in app with our own APIs that automatically ties it. If you go directly through the carrier registry, there is the campaign registry, there is no benefit of doing that. And also we won't be able to tie your campaign to your number. So it would just cost you money for no reason. Okay, cool. There needs to be a better way to filter these questions. Okay, here we go. I was billed for, is there any way to filter it the opposite way? Sorry, I'm filtering by date and it's putting the most recent questions first. You'd think it'd do the oldest questions. I entered the information on the registration from exactly as listed on my EAN document from the IRS, but it keeps getting rejected. What do I do? That is a great question, Holly. We've had a few folks who swear their information is correct. They say, I have the legal docs right here and it is getting rejected. What do I do? This along the same lines, we have folks that are located in countries outside of the US, and when they are looking up the business identification number, the databases are a little sparse, so they're having that same issue as well. It's a little more common with folks outside of the US, but it's happened to US folks as well. So the databases used by these third-party registration companies, they are sometimes out of date or the information could be inaccurate. We have a process for contesting that if you believe the information is accurate. My colleague Drew can capture your email and reach out to you and send you over a form to fill out, which will request additional legal documentation, basically just any article of incorporation or tax information or whatever it is that shows your EIN and your business name, and then they will manually review and approve it. But that is a great question, Holly. Edward says, I can't read the slides. I'm sorry. I don't know. I saw that one too from Natasha. I guess I don't know. I should have seen that one before, but it wasn't flagged during the presentation. I couldn't see the question, so I apologize about that. I'm not sure why some folks are having a hard time. Maybe it's their screen size, because on my screen it shows it is quite large and it's pretty easy and clear to read what it says. So sorry about that, Edward. But the information, I didn't read directly off the slides, but I provided all of the information that was on the slides and more. So if you're a good listener, you would have got all of the information above. Cool. Wow, Drew, you are lightning fast. He has answered so many questions. Danny Fano, might be mispronouncing your name. Sorry, Danny. It's Danny Fano. I am an EA and I mainly use OpenPhone, text call personal contacts of hotels and restaurants where their number is available on Google. I don't use OpenPhone to send mass campaigns to clients' customers. What do I put on how do you collect consent to send messages question on the registration page? So if you are operating a business, you actually, a lot of folks don't know this. It is illegal to send unsolicited text messages. You cannot just send thousands of messages to random recipients, spamming their phone numbers. That's actually illegal. And that's one thing the carriers want to crack down on, because that is spam, even if you're a well-intentioned business marketing. And I personally hate receiving those messages myself. But though the regulations do fit you if those hotels and restaurants are in the US. Now, if you put "how do you collect consent to send messages" question on the registration page, you do have to provide how you collect consent. That could mean your customers sign up on your website. That could mean they fill out a form or give you their contact information. But in your case, you could even say, like, these are publicly, I work with different hotels and restaurants. This is all publicly available information. They've consented to be contacted by putting their information online, and that should work. Okay, Jamie says, what if we only call prospects clients and they start the text if we do not ever initiate the text? Yes, Jamie, if you message US numbers, you are required to register. You'll still receive their text, but if they shut off outbound unregistered messaging, you will not be able to reply to them. So yes, you still have to register. Anyone who sends messages to US numbers in general is required to register under P10 DLC. Well, if you send messages to US numbers and you use a 10-digit long code number. Okay. Langford Chew, great name. I love that name, Langford. Langford. Sorry if I missed this info, but will OpenPhone notify us if our accounts and capabilities are going to be filtered? So we pass on as much information as we get as soon as we get it. We're fully transparent. We look at you as a partner in this. We understand these regulations are kind of thrust upon you. They're unexpected and they might be shocking or upsetting. And we're right there with you. We empathize with you, and we want to do everything in our power to be as transparent and create a process that's simple, that guides you through registration in the most easy, clear, and obvious way. So if we have a hard deadline on when unregistered messages are going to be filtered, we'll let you know. We also pass along error codes in app. If your message is undelivered for any reason, you could highlight over it and it'll say the filtered reason. So if it says this message is filtered by the carrier, you'll know that the message was filtered by the carrier. Okay. Laura Riley says, hello, I use OpenPhone for work. My coworkers and I all have separate accounts. With this change, would you recommend everyone registering individually or putting everyone under business account registering? Is it possible to take existing numbers and put them under one account? Technically, it would be possible to put numbers under one account. That would be somewhat of a headache. I'd recommend consolidating accounts. It would make things a lot easier for billing. But for your specific use case, my colleague Drew can mark down your information, and we can have someone on our support team reach out to you to help you migrate all into one account or to, help whatever thing works best for you. Dorothy says, we pay annually. How will the fee of $1.50 be billed? Great question. So we haven't baked the pricing into the product yet, but we do plan on charging that $1.50 on an annual rate. So we would just pass along each month based off, what is it, 12 times 150? Like, oh man, my math is so bad. What is that? $18. $18, we would just charge you one time $18 during your annual bill. It'll come as one line item, and we'll go ahead and pay it on a monthly basis, even though you paid it on an annual basis, which makes more sense rather than you paying $1.50 a month charge on top of your annual bill. Rochelle says, we are under the same company, but have created a different workspace for different department. Do I need to register again for my own account? If you could consolidate your accounts, that would be best. Reach out to our support team and they'll help. That honestly makes everything easier from a billing perspective and account management perspective. A lot of benefits for you and your company. It's easier if people are joining or leaving and managing all of that in one centralized account management system. But if that's not what works for you, we do recommend applying twice. That is something that we've been doing, but and then we'll put things together on the back end from there. Parul says, hi, I'm presuming my number 833 is a toll-free number as I got an email that a toll-free number and asked for verification. Yep, 833 is a toll-free number. That is a different process. Follow the steps that my colleague Drew sent, or you can just search toll-free verification OpenPhone. You'll find our Help Center article, which will walk you through that. Natasha had a question, but Drew was typing and then he stopped. Sorry, Drew, if I scared you away. Will the single not campaign messages be filtered also? Yes, any message to US numbers will potentially face message filtering. So you're going to want to get registered. Crystal says, we are not sole prop, have one number each. Can you repeat how an individual will register in sole prop and make it clear we are not a business? Crystal, I'm not quite sure about your use case. I would have to learn more. I'm curious who the we is. If you have multiple phone numbers, but you're using OpenPhone for personal use, it's going to be a little tricky in terms of how you're going to coordinate that. It's going to be respective to your situation. Let's say if you're a family all using OpenPhone for personal use, in your case, it'd probably be best to separate into separate accounts because we can't tie a single campaign to multiple phone numbers on sole prop. And yes, technically you are sole prop if you're using OpenPhone for personal use and you don't have an EIN number. So that is what you would qualify under. Now, we're not going to limit the ability for those who registered on sole prop to add additional numbers until we receive word that unregistered messages will be filtered entirely. So in the future, if you're on sole prop, you'll only be able to have one phone number, but until they disallow unregistered messages entirely, you could still utilize your multiple numbers. Hopefully that made sense, Crystal. Please reach out to our support team. We're happy to answer questions, a little more thoroughly specific to your use case, because I think that's a little more important to have context there so I could correctly tailor that answer to you. Allison says, I have two phone numbers. I also have one other person that shares the workspace of the one phone number. Would I have to register each phone number or each person? That person also has his own account. Would I have to register him for an account and he has to register for his account? So he would have to register for his account and you register for your account. But if he has a separate account that's attached to your workspace, your registration for your workspace would attach to his account that is linked to your workspace. So his other account is completely separate. It might be better for you to reach out to our support team to understand like what your specific use case is so we can give you specific customized answer. But that in general should help answer your question. Thanks, Allison. Mario says, thanks, Drew. We will wait for instructions for personal use. Now, I think there are some issues with OpenPhone for some specific applications like banks rejecting the phone number or double authentication. This is going to be fixed. So, Mario, this is something that's actually always occurred and completely unrelated to A2P 10DLC. It seems like you're referring to verification codes from banks or institutions, sometimes apps like Uber or other services. Many times they don't allow messages to VoIP numbers or virtual phone lines in general. Sometimes we have customers that say it was working great and suddenly it stopped working. That's entirely on the end of the company sending messages and not on our end. So their systems might choose to allow or disallow virtual numbers, and maybe it didn't catch you a virtual number for some time being. But as seen through many of our Help Center documentation, we try to let people know in onboarding as well, you can't reliably use a virtual phone system for two-factor authentication, OTP verification, things like that. The main reason is because historically virtual phone numbers could change hands quite frequently. And the problem with that is if you have your bank set up to your phone number, your Airbnb account or whatever it is with your OpenPhone number, and then you left and let's say the number gets released and it's picked up by someone else. Now at OpenPhone, we don't recycle numbers like that, but many other companies do. So someone could then take it, pretend to be you, get into your bank account and steal all of your money. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but that is why the banks do not allow it. Denise says, your video appeared larger than the presentation slide, just made it hard. Can you send a copy of slides to the attendees? Let me see what we could do in terms of cleaning up the slides. I think that was a display thing because on my screen, my video is like this big. It's maybe like 1 inch by 1.5 inches. And then the presentation takes up my entire screen. So I think it was just a display thing. You could have adjusted the settings on your end, but I understood that was confusing as a new tool for you. Let me see what we could do in terms of sending presentation slides to help people out. Grizina, might be mispronouncing your name. Sorry, Grizina. As a sole incorporated company owner in Canada with an OpenPhone number on my website, I want to make sure that my calls are not sent to spam. Don't do campaigns. Rarely call or text us. Do I have to register? Well, if you don't text the US at all, you don't have to register. If you text them a little, I'd recommend registering. A2P 10DLC is a messaging regulation, so it has nothing to do with calls. But if you do register, a bonus caveat is we also register you for Shaken and Stir, which is a calling protocol, which will help decrease the likelihood of getting filtered for or being determined to be spam, where it says spam or scam likely on a recipient's phone, receiving phone. So I would still recommend registering in that capacity. Wow, Drew, you are so fast. Foddy says, sometimes we want to send mass messages to our clients, for example, event reminders or marketing. We have consent at the time of collecting the phone number on our website. Will there be a problem if we exceed a certain number of outgoing SMS at the same time? We were texting Canada to Canada. So good news, Canada to Canada is not affected by the A2P 10DLC regulations at this time. Like I said, Canada could adopt them in the future, but they haven't adopted them now, so you shouldn't have issues. Now, on our end, we are not a mass marketing service, so it really depends on the amount that you're sending. If you're sending tens of thousands of messages, that actually hurts the trust score of OpenPhone in general with the carriers, and that's not something that we allow on our platform per our terms of service. But if you're sending a few hundred messages here and there to your clients that have already opted in and you have an established history with them, that shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. I imagine you're using a tool like Zapier to send mass messages. Most people utilize that for that workaround there. So that shouldn't be a problem. Now, I do want to say there is a likelihood that you still can get filtered by Canadian carriers or spam not related to A2P 10DLC regulations. And you have to think about it from their perspective. Their systems are completely automated. They're not manually checking the message contents or anything like that. What happens is, though, that they see a large influx in, let's say, if you're messaging, I don't know Canadian providers very well. Rogers is a Canadian provider. You're messaging tons of Rogers contacts, and you send 1,000 to 2,000 Rogers contacts. You've never messaged them before. Well, Rogers' automated system goes, what the heck? There's an uptick from this number to a Rogers number. There's 500 messages or 1,000 messages with the exact same content. Looks like spam. Let's filter it out. And if that happens, reach out to our support team. We'll help you get unfiltered, and we'll send some best practices as well. Denise says, when filling out the form, my website name is different than the name of my LLC. Will that cause my application to get rejected? No, it should not. You shouldn't have a problem with that. As long as the EIN, the name that the business is officially registered under, matches the name that you submit, you're probably fine. And if you have any issues, don't worry. We'll escalate it and we'll get it taken care of. Suzanne Smith, why is sole prop campaign fee $2 when the low volume standard, which I assume you're referring to, is only $1.50? It's a good question. I don't know. I didn't make the prices. They're just pass through costs by the third party companies that handle and hold the registrations as a part of these changing regulations. So literally not much we could do there. We're really nothing we could do there at all. So sorry about that, Susan. I understand. I thought the same thing, like why you could send more and why is it more expensive? I don't know. I didn't set the costs. Sorry for any inconvenience that it causes. Chris Harris Smith. Oh, Drew just got that one. Teresa Kent. I only use OpenPhone for calls only. I'm a business with an EIN LLC, but I do not text any messages. Do I need to register? If you only call and you don't text, you don't need to register. Don't you worry about it, Teresa. But if you do start sending messages to US numbers, you're going to want to get registered. Rochelle says, I received the email notice about registration, but some of my colleagues did not receive the notice and the option to register in OpenPhone settings. We've checked their spam trash as we can't see the email about the notice. So it's actually only sent to owners of the organization. So if you have colleagues in your organization that aren't owners, that's why they didn't receive it, because only one person in a workspace needs to register. Aaron Brand, are OpenPhone or other smaller VoIP companies attempting to challenge this new law registry, or is Panera's box already open and now we're stuck reacting? Good question, Aaron. Like there's not much we can really do. Like you look at the size of these multi-billion, dollar publicly traded companies that are part of much larger conglomerates, and there's three of them all banding together adopting these regulations. But we actually look at the regulations like a good thing. So we know it's unfortunate to have to get registered, and we know that the increased cost is surprising. We definitely want to create a good customer experience, and a lot of the things in this registration is so antithetical to the world of software that you're used to, with quick APIs and quick registrations and yada yada yada. So we do understand your frustrations there, but ultimately these changes are a good thing. I mean, I hate receiving spam text messages, and I receive them all the time. From someone saying like, "Hey, is this John?" And you go, "No, sorry, wrong number." And then they send you a picture and try to have conversation with you. You're like, "What the heck? I receive 3 of these a week. Someone's got to do something about this to crack down." So that's what they're doing. And I completely understand. We consider ourselves partners with the carriers as well, because we want to prevent spam. If we work with them, they'll be happy to work with us. They're more likely to always deliver our messages in the future. We've seen other companies, some contemporaries, companies a little smaller than us, who have not abided by industry regulations and have spam problems on their platform. And then what happens to them is the main carriers just cease their ability to contact them in general, which ultimately destroys the business. That we're never even close to that. It's never been a discussion, so don't you worry whatsoever. But that's why we comply. Like we are, our hands are somewhat tied here. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Laura says, outside of my use cases, is there an implication of how I register for some listing someplace that anyone but the carriers will see? Mostly use the number as an alternative or personal number. No, the registration isn't public. It's just like a closed private database. The carriers use different APIs to pull from the database to look up information when they receive text messages from your number. Langford responds, for clarification, is each OpenPhone number required to register to include each number added to your workspace? No, when you register, it registers for your entire workspace. And then if you're in low volume standard, we add all of your numbers automatically to your campaign on our end. So don't worry about anything on your end. Denise says, does it matter if you use one number for business and the other for personal, but they exist in the same workspace? Does the run registration apply to both? So low volume standard will apply to both, but sole prop, you could only have one number registered under sole prop. So hopefully that helps answer your question there, Denise. Sanjay says, if my business is new and doesn't have a website now, but does have one in the future, will I have to re-register? Nope, you won't have to re-register. I'd recommend including your socials, any sort of links that you have. That should help. Karina Joy says, I'm a small business offering transaction services to agents in a larger brokerage. I do not have a tax ID as I am self-employed and get 1099 from my brokerage. Am I understanding correctly that I'll receive information and register my business at a later date? Yep, sounds like you qualify for sole prop. You will receive information in the coming weeks. We'll have it on our app very soon. Our developers are working very, very, very hard to get that ready for you. Suburban Casa says, should we include our doing business ad name in the legal business name field, such as ABC, LLC? Yeah, go ahead, because it is important. If your message samples, if you say, hey, this is this message, and then your message that you registered under, your brand that you registered under are vastly different, they might have some questions. So I'd recommend including that. Patrice Benda says, is the name on the registration ever made public information somewhere? No, it should not. Allison Chatter says, what is considered a campaign? A campaign is just a fancy word for what type of messages you're sending. So a lot of these A2P 10DLC regulations are built for companies with a much more mature use case that are sending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of messages. And so there's further types of brand registrations that we actually don't offer here at OpenPhone. We're only offering low volume standard as well as the sole proprietor registration. So some companies might have multiple campaigns depending on what type of messages they're sending and to be under those limits for each specific campaign. But none of our users are really sending more than, the bulk of our users at least aren't sending more than those 6,000 messages a day. So the low volume standard or sole prop should cover most of them. A campaign is just like, why are you sending messages? And we register you under the low volume mixed messaging campaign, which means that you send all types of messages. It could be notifications, appointment reminders, follow-ups. It could be marketing messages. It could be nonprofit messages, whatever you're sending that actually all falls under low volume mixed. There are other campaigns where you send more than 6,000 messages, and some people only send marketing for that campaign or only send whatever from a number. That's why they use the term campaign. But just think of it as a campaign is why are you sending messages? A brand is who are you? A campaign is why are you sending messages? Suzanne says OpenPhone at $13 a month was good, cheap alternative to a $15 a month Mint Mobile. With a $2 sole prop and reg, it's a 28% increase and puts it pretty well over the real cell phone. Maybe clarify your pricing page. It's not very clear, and you may want to consider a new pricing strategy. Thanks for your feedback, Suzanne. We have so much more to offer than just a Mint Mobile. Maybe that's not the best fit for your use case, but people have the ability to collaborate. People have the ability to share various phone numbers, call or text, and have hundreds of people answering the same exact lines, transfer calls, check their analytics, check their usage, yada, 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 send snippets, link up with Zapier, and have automatic applications for all these various things. And when you compare us to other competitors in the VoIP space, our pricing is actually on the lower end. So if you look at more of our contemporaries, you'll see that we're actually much more cheaper and cost effective than them. But I definitely understand the concern. If you just need a cell phone and you were using this as an alternative to paying for a more traditional cell phone, I understand why you would consider a Mint Mobile or another provider. We obviously want to support you and your business, but we want you to be happy wherever you are. So if the case is OpenPhone's no longer a good fit for you, we're happy to help you port out your number to whatever provider that you choose. Completely understand, and I appreciate the feedback. And also, we did adjust our pricing page. You should be able to see the additional fees that are actually in each section. But the pricing, that doesn't go any to us. I want to clarify that we're not taking any of the $2 sole prop charge as well as the additional brand registration. None of that goes to us. Edward says, does 10DLC receive any data or metadata regarding the text content we're sending? What kind of data is sent to them apart from the registration form? They only receive the information in your registration form that you submit, which will be the message samples and your business information, and all of that stuff. And they store it in a database that allows the three carriers to access it upon receiving a message from your number. Martha says, are there other VoIP companies having to register? I've messaged this to other VoIP users and they haven't been asked to register. I don't know why, but the ability for me to click answer question has gone away, but I'm just going to answer it anyway. Yes, I'm not sure which companies you're referring to, but if they're not registering their messages, then they're not going to be compliant and they're at risk of increased message filtering. This is not a OpenPhone specific regulation. You can see even some of our competitors have disallowed the ability to send outbound messages by March 31st date, because that was the cutoff that they were given. But yeah, you could look it up. You could search A2P 10DLC and you could look at our competitors, RingCentral, AirCall, DialPad, or you could even check like a more upstream carrier like Bandwidth, who has a ton of information on this. It's good to kind of cross-check as well. And you could see that they're all enforcing these regulations as well. They're industry-wide regulations. Sanjay says, once registered, is there a chance messages will still get filtered and blocked? Are there certain steps required to stay compliant? So there's no steps required to stay compliant, but there's always some good messaging best practices. Like if you're going to send a text, send it like a text. Don't send, hey, John, this is Matt from, that's actually pretty good. That's sender identification. That's actually a pretty good thing. Hey, John, this is Matt from OpenPhone. That's actually a pretty good way to start a message. Let me think of a bad way to start a message. Should be, want 15% off? Click this link now. And then it's like a bit.ly shortened link. That looks like spam. If you're sending a lot of those, that doesn't look very good. But good ways to stay compliant is be like, hey, Mike, this is Sanjay from whatever business. I'm reaching out today because of this. You've stated why you're reaching out. You've stated who you are. That's a great way to start an opener and decrease the likelihood of ever getting filtered. There's still a chance messages will get filtered and blocked, though it's substantially decreased. You'll have to have behavior that will be considered to be spammy by the carriers. But if you are registered, then we can escalate your, contesting of your filtering and hopefully get that removed pretty quickly. If you were unregistered, we don't have the path for that. Okay, folks, we're almost at the hour. I told you I'll stay for the hour, even though I only originally planned 45 minutes. I'm happy to answer any final thoughts, questions. I see folks put stuff in the chat, but hopefully you put all of your questions in the questions tab. Oh, cool. We got 2 more questions. Grazina. Man, I wish I could say the name. I love the name, though. Very cool. Is giving a business number to phone carrier a common practice? I'm not sure what exactly that you're asking here. Is giving a phone number, a business number to a phone carrier a common practice? These are, if you're asking like why you have to do this, it's part of the new messaging regulations in A2P 10DLC. You're basically just declaring, who you are as your business, like what your brand is or who your business is. And you're verifying who that is, and then you're attaching numbers to that. So they say these numbers belong to this business. And then when you send a message, you're declaring these are the type of messages that I send. And so when they receive a message from your number, they automatically know, but there's a request in the database, and they say, oh, this is Grazina. She sends marketing messages, or she sends notification messages, or whatever it is for you in your business. And if you're low volume mixed standard, you will be sending all types of messages without issue, and they should not filter your messages. Allison says, what if you send photos with your messages? Is that considered spam? No, there shouldn't be any increased risk of sending photos with your messages to be considered spam. I want to be clear, I know everyone's worried about messages being filtered out and filtered as spam. Generally, you don't get your messages filtered as spam, or at least historically, unless your behavior is spammy. That's usually sending a high volume of texts to people who have never received messages from you before, so you have no conversation history whatsoever. You're sending the same type of message content over and over. It includes a lot of things like in caps, like sign up now or free or 15% off. It includes links, especially links that are shortened using like a bit.ly or another online URL shortener. There's a few different messaging best practices. Maybe my colleague Drew we have a blog, I think, on messaging best practices, or a help center article as well.Maybe my colleague Drew could quickly search that and share that with you. Hopefully he's able to find that pretty quick. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. 3 more questions maybe. I'm happy to answer any final questions. I see that most of the folks have dropped off and folks are continuing to drop. Anita asks, when registering the business name, should we write our LLC name or our doing business as? In our messages, we write the doing business as name and never mention our LLC. I'd recommend including whatever it is that you're registered on your EIN as, but you might want to include the LLC and then write doing business as and blank, so that what you say you are matches your message samples. That is one reason we've seen people get declined, is if they say I'm Mike's Home Repair LLC. And then my messages, I go, hey, this is John's Landscaping and Home Maintenance. Then the people verifying are like, these are different. Like, that's not the same company. So you might want to include that. And if for some reason they reject you for that, don't worry. We will just resubmit. We'll contest it, and it should be fine. Allison says, I send links, however it is, to my calendar, set appointments, or maybe watch a video. Links aren't too bad in and of themselves. It's just if that's all you send are links and it's the same message format, I wouldn't worry about it. I would try to get registered, and getting registered will help prevent you from being filtered. That's the whole purpose of being registered, is then the carriers know, hey, this is Allison. Allison works at this company. Allison uses OpenPhone or another messaging service to send calendar invites to set appointments or watch a video to her customers that she already has engaged in communications with. Sanjay says, do we have to have opt-in language in every message, even if the messages are more conversational? So good question. It's always good. It's always best practice to include opt-in language in the very first message. Hi, this is Sanjay from this, blah, 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 blah. That's generally considered opt-in language, and they're replying to showing consent that they want to have a conversation with you. You also could include opt-out language, like press stop at any time to not receive these messages, especially if you're sending marketing messages. Those are the types of best practices that help your text not be filtered I know that's something the industry is generally moving to, is pushing the opt-in, opt-out language, the sender identification where you say, hi, this is Sanjay, yada, yada, yada. But I would recommend it in the first message, or if it's something you haven't messaged someone in a very long time, 3 months, 6 months, I would recommend redoing it. But no, you don't have to send every message. Hey, this is Sanjay from this, blah, blah, blah. Message me if you want this information. Hey, this is Sanjay from this. You don't have to do that every single time. Lamin says, my text consists of my clients initially sending texts and pictures. Do I still need to register? If you send messages to US phone numbers with a 10-digit long code on a virtual phone system like OpenPhone, yes, you need to register. Hopefully that's clear. I know people ask a lot. They say, I have this and this and this. Do I still need to register? If you send messages to US numbers with a 10-digit long code, so that's like a local area code number, it's like a 602-455-3986. If you send messages from that number to a US recipient, yes, you fall under these requirements and you have to register. Everyone, folks, thank you so much for your time. An hour just absolutely flew by. I hope y'all enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope this provided some clarity. Sorry about the display issue. I'll see what we could do about getting y'all a presentation. And maybe in the replay, you could adjust the screen size yourself. I'll have to check. I will answer this one last question, and then I do have to hop off. If I fail to register right away and register on a later date, will that be an issue? So we'd recommend registering as early as possible. But again, we don't expect that all unregistered messages will be filtered at least through August, but we're not 100% sure. And we're going to communicate these timelines as we receive them. I would recommend registering as quickly as you can, but folks who are on SolProp can't register right now anyway. So you're not alone here. And thank you, Langford, for the kind words. Thank you everyone in the chat for the kind words. And thank you so much to Drew. Drew, you are the real MVP, answering everyone's questions lightning fast. Couldn't have done this without your support. Would have been totally underwater drowning. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Sanjay, Mario, Theodora. Appreciate all of y'all. Rochelle, Alex, Crystal. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And Natasha as well. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.